Hello everyone, Tristolanier here. As you may know, Curious George is one of my favorite TV shows I used to watch when I was a kid. So far, everything I mostly liked about the show was the characters, the story elements, and most importantly, the episodes. Now, one thing I wanted to do in this video is to make a really good top 10 video. And yes, I did a top 10 video back in my old account before it got terminated because it wasn't really my best work I've done out of my other videos I tried to do. So what I'm going to be doing is to show you all my top 10 favorite Curious George episodes I picked for this list. I was originally going to make a top 5 favorite episodes video once, since that idea got me thinking back in my old account, but there were just so many episodes I wanted to talk about that I decided to keep a few good ones on this list. Now keep in mind, these episodes I've chosen for this video are all in my opinion, that being the episodes I ranked from mediocre to best. If you don't like an episode that I used for this, or think that shouldn't be on the list, that's fine. But remember, this is my top 10 favorite episodes. And by the way, I'm also including some of the George and Hundley episodes as well, just to be sure. So without further ado, here are my top 10 favorite Curious George episodes. Number 10, Curious George Takes a Vacation. This episode is quite nice to me, mainly because how the plot goes. It starts off with George and Ted, who overslept during their trip to the airport because the man forgot to set off the alarm.
George, we overslept!
If you guys didn't mean to wake up an hour later, surely you wouldn't have missed your flight by then. But I don't think the man with the yellow hat is the only one who didn't mean to oversleep in cartoon history. I'm looking at you, Memechi.
Oh, a student who's late for class.
I'm sorry, Miss Perfect.
Anyways, once they traveled at the airport, George is given his very first airplane toy. A few minutes later, he left it on the old lady's spread suitcase. So it's up to him to find it before he and the man could take a trip to Hawaii. I'll say it's a fun airport adventure, even when you have the important rules of traveling, that is. Some things in the airport I never knew about was how the luggage was loaded and how does it work. That said, I don't think George should be able to go into that situation. But seriously though, is it just me, or does this scene remind me of the airport scene from Toy Story 2? I don't know, maybe it's just me. Another thing in this episode that got my attention is the animal loading area scene. Like seriously, I didn't realize it yet until I saw it again for the third time. If you look closely, you can see Noki the cat being trapped in a cage. Is Chef Biscuity taking a vacation to somewhere who knows where with his own cat being caged up?
She wants to come in. Oh, I feel terrible.
No, seriously, look. This cat has her extra cutesy bow. Usually, in this case, her extra large cutesy bow, as what the narrator said in the Job episode. Okay, maybe this cat might be an imposter of her because of those classic cat noises you hear in various media. Plus, I feel bad for this guy who has a bit of a trouble with George during his mission. So yeah, this is one of the more underrated episodes I've watched from Season 1, but in the end, it's still a good episode for me to experience. Number 9. Night of the Wiener Dog. This is what I prefer as the more better George and Henley episodes, and I'll be honest, this is the perfect one I've chosen. Let's face it, Scaredy Dog didn't do all that well in terms of how they managed to make it a scary feel to it, even when it involves cow noises echoing in the basement. Unless it doesn't get involved with the THX Mook intro, which I remember back then when I was watching Monsters Inc. The other not so good George and Henley episode was Shipwrecked with Henley, obviously because of the framing device kinda sucked at being good, especially the scene when they were having a hard time helping together. Anyways, Night of the Wiener Dog was a fun episode to watch. It was cute to show Hundley's character's development to George whenever it makes it feel dignified. As the plot demands itself, it's been the first time he's been apart from the doorman in over 3 years. And George's room isn't the dapper dachshund's idea of neat and orderly. That said, it basically tries to show how important he feels to himself whenever George tries to be a good friend to him during his sleepover. Even when it just goes to show how his squeaky mouse can tell him who his real friends are. Good episode for me, except for one minor problem it included. Number 8. Curious George Goes Up the River. This is the episode me and my mom would always remember, everything from the river scene to the duck rock, even when George is trying to find the chicks for Mrs. Rankin's chicken. This is such a classic episode I couldn't help remembering because it's the way how the scenes satisfy me in terms of both the music and how good it sounds. And let's not forget about how really good the plot adds up to the environment of the animation, all because that is very fascinating to me because of how well done the animators did with the main aspect. Oh, and let's not forget about how much I love Chubby Squirrel as a character. At this point, this might be one of his funniest moments ever in the series. Although, out of context, he didn't want George to get lost and take all the duck food with him he had, and I do like the way he sounds. Yeah, that was pretty adorable. Again, this is my favorite episode that me and my mom would always remember because of how well the environment looks, from the animation to the beautiful landmarks. Number 7. Curious George discovers the poles. Wow, this one got me into tears, didn't it? Let's summarize the plot to give you all an introduction. George and Bill were having a wonderful time at Lake Wanasink Lake. While on their journey, George discovered the tadpoles, as which Bill progressively answers as a common form of pond life. So as time went on, George decided to look after them, but after a little while, he decided to let the tadpoles go for a quick swim in the pool while he went to get their lunch. That is when he realizes he lost them. However, he doesn't know that they do amazing things as they grow.
They do some amazing things as they grow.
After a few weeks later, he suddenly imagines what happens if they grow up for a whole month. By then, he returns to the lake, only to find frogs. Bill then arrives telling him that the tadpoles have been growing up into frogs, just like how his caterpillar turns into a butterfly. This episode got me on the edge of my seat, because who knew there would be a plot synthesis with a sad twist at the end. I was really not expecting that to happen ever since I first watched it on my Soon Night DVD. If the Muppet Babies episode wasn't the only one to make me cry, well, this episode came in with the same results. Except this episode involves tadpoles, not Greeny McPlant. I don't know what else to say. It's just a fun episode to watch, but also sad for me to experience but with an unexpected twist. Number 6. Camping with Hunley. This is no joke, the best Hunley related episode I've ever watched from season 1 to 2. George wanted to go camping again with Ted, but he doesn't know when they'll be able to do it again. This gives the doorman the perfect idea for him and Hunley to do their next day off. So he decided to let George to come along for their camping trip. However, Hunley doesn't seem to be happy at this point, as if he was expecting George to do something wrong with his day off. A little while later, a big rainstorm came out of nowhere, causing a big gust of wind deactivating the power, and a crud ton of water came crashing down the trailer, almost flooding it. Now where did I seen that before? Sometime later, after that accident, George tries to think what an expert camper would do. And before long, he saved the day by drying the sleeping bags, and by having a satisfying meal. I just really love the idea of having a curious monkey going out in the woods for a fun camp-out adventure, even when it comes to how well the locations look when the animators did a good job at. And I gotta really love Hunley's character in this episode. It makes him feel more unique than just being, well, it's like what Spike said at his best.
He's just there for comic relief.
Either way, this was one of my favorite episodes I still remember watching, and I would always like it to watch it again whenever I feel like it. Number 5. From Scratch. Can we all just explain how really special this episode is to me? Well, this is like a Sherlock Holmes type of episode. Well, like any other TV shows who I know who had an episode that is based on Sherlock Holmes. But this episode, however, is kind of like how you played as a crewmate in Among Us. Well, sort of. But let's go ahead and summarize this. Chef Biscotti tells George and the man that his cat Noki had been scratching up the seat, which is what he thought at first. As George and the man went over to Professor Wiseman's new exhibit, he started to wonder how great scientists would do if they were monkeys, who had no cannoli. So it's up to him to find out what was making those scratches, just to prove him that Gnocchi is innocent.
Ooh, I love cannoli.
As a neat introduction to Chef Biscotti for himself the first time when I saw him, I even thought his character development was spot on. Even in later episodes, I couldn't agree more. Also, I never realized he's voiced by the great Jim Cummings himself, who, by the way, is known for the modern voices of Pooh and Tigger. There's nothing else to say about this episode besides the fact it's one of the more neutral episodes of Season 1. Number 4. B is for Bear. If there was anything else I liked in Season 1 besides From Scratch and Camping with Hunley, it was this episode. To start this off, George walked over to the Rankins for a special treat, that being their homemade honey, and it was even better with freshly baked bread. Not only did he saw a bee, which gave him his first bee sting, but suddenly saw a bear who took his snack. He then tries to warn the man with the yellow hat about the bear he saw, but he said nobody has seen one in over 20 years. Sometime later, the man took George over to the Rankins about the cool things that bees can do, but he was positive, trying to tell everyone that he's seen a real-life bear wandering around in the woods.
It helps more flowers to grow in the future.
This is definitely an absolute classic for me to watch. It's got some charming moments, and the fact that the Rankins told George about the interesting things about the bees. I love how this episode gives me an impression about how the honey is made and how the bees do amazing things even when they are pretending they're hive. I definitely give this episode a solid B for good measures. Great plot synthesis, the topics about bees, and it still made me laugh to this day. I'm still wondering if George would like to meet the bear again sometime in a future episode. But again, that's just my opinion. Number 3, here's George versus Winter. Instead of meeting the bunnies for a visit, George wanted to not let Winter,
well, ruin his winter.
while insisting of feeding Jumpy Squirrel every day. Not only did he play ice bowling and ice hockey with Jumpy, which is one of my favorite moments from Season 1 by the way, but he was having a problem with the weather while trying to play outside. You know, we had lots of snow at our old house, and one thing I want to mention is that this is one of the episodes that got me inspired from. I tried my best to recreate the ice bowling scene, but it didn't work out so well. This is probably the best episode to finish off Season 1, and I think they did a good job accomplishing their goal to concluding a really good season. Okay, well, if George was trying his best to do what he wanted for winter, he could have just grabbed an electric blanket to keep him warm instead of his jacket, scarf, and hat. Even during the first time he got his foot cold in the frozen water when he was trying to get in the swimming pool. I mean, look at Chilly Willy, he seems to be sure about that too. And one final thing, this is the last Season 1 episode that William H. Macy would be the narrator before Rino Romano would take his place until Season 2 to what we have today as the current narrator. Let's give him a moment's silence for that.
Yeah, winter is a roller coaster, and monkeys love roller coasters.
Number 2, Train of Light. One of George's favorite things to do in the city is to visit Mabel's department store, because there are so many things to do. One day, while the man with the yellow hat is doing his shopping, George sees something he has never seen before, a moving light in the shape of a train, and soon discovers that a lamp with a rotating shade is making it. Fascinated by the light, George decides to make his own moving light at home, but he realized he was locked inside because the store was closed after an hour or so. So with nothing else to do, George decides to make his own moving light all by himself, inside the store. Making a lampshade is one of the best things I really wanted to do in real life. Usually you can make whatever shades you wanted to use. Not by saying I can make one in a real store in the middle of the night, that is. This is another good episode to conclude another season of the show. I say it's one of the best finales to finish off Season 6. Sure, Season 6 has some of the better episodes I could have chosen for this list, but there was just so many good ones. Still, I think it might be a good way to get me some sleep after watching this, and George buys a kite. It's great, it's fun, it really treats me how to really make a good lampshade. Also, there's one more thing I want to mention. Can we all just explain how really good the music is after when the man finds George at the end? Brings tears to your eyes, doesn't it? It's no wonder why I put this episode on the number 2 spot. Again, it's a great episode and a great way to finish off Season 6. And my number 1 favorite episode of Curious George is Sunat. Now this is truly the only Season 1 episode that got my attention the most. Not only that, but it was featured in my first Curious George DVD that I got when I was little. I'll give you all spoilers for those who haven't seen it yet. George wanted to meet the baby panda who was being shown live on the zoo website. Later that day, he arrived at the new panda habitat. George was having the time of his life, so much so he basically decided to watch the panda for hours. A little while later, he was ready to leave after feeding the poor Philip because it can't get any more leaves to eat. That was until the zoo manager closed the zoo for good, and George had no idea how to get back home, so he decided to find the right door to lead him out of the zoo. However, he mistakenly leaves more than just one door open. That is if he didn't count the lion out of his habitat. Everything about this episode was truly astounding, even when it tries to be the best episode out of the Season 1 category. I remember the very day, the first time I watched this episode when I got the DVD of both Zoo Night and Rocket Ride, and that is where it brought me into interest of Curious George. I decided to watch it again and it instantly became my favorite. That just goes to show how amazing Zoo Night was to stick in my memory like that. As of today, it would still be my all-time favorite episode as a child, and still is to this very day. And that's why I put it at number 1. Like I said before, it's a general fan favorite, and rightfully so. Zoo Night is a masterpiece for both myself and my first interest into the world of Curious George. Thanks for watching, everybody. Once again, what is your favorite episode out of the series? Tell me in the comments below and let me know. This is Tristan Lanier, signing off.